Hey guys, it's K Journey, and I am back today actually with a repeat of last week. Um, so what happened? Last week I posted a video on how, if you weren't here for it, or if you missed it, or if you're new to the channel, I posted a video about how I plot my novels and how I kind of structure my plot, and also like how I do sequels and whatnot in a series. I realized about 2 days after I posted that video that you really couldn't see what was going on the piece of paper that was in front of me. And I also realized that I had accidentally directly quoted Campfire. I actually have it right here, Campfire. They have a blog post, I will post in the link, where they kind of expand on Katie Tastic's 2017 outline. And I had planned on rewording it in my own words, and I had just directly quoted them. So I was having dreams about it last night where I was like, oh, I'm gonna get, copyright infringement and you can't see it anyway and blah blah blah. And I was like, you know what? I woke up this morning and I was like, I'm just gonna redo the video. I'm going to go through my whole outline that I had for the video and reword things so that I am not not quoting anyone directly, and if I do, then I give them credit, because I had planned on putting it in text on the screen when I posted the last video of like, these are direct quotes every single time, and I forgot to do it. So this time I'm just not directly quoting, so that when I go to edit it, if I forget something, it's not that problem. And I also just decided that in my outline I was going to expand more on my interpretation and less on Campfire, so they're not really in this. However, if you are curious about Katie Tastic's outline here and about like doing a deep dive on what they think she meant by it, it's a really good resource. I think it's fabulous. So I will still link that blog post down below. I'm going to link Katie Tastic's original video where she kind of outlines what this is, as well as Cam Weiland Structuring Your Novel. I'm going to link that down below as well. I love her ideas. In fact, I implement her ideas in a lot of places in here, but not where probably Katie Tastic would have put them. I also, James Scott Bell, right from the midpoint. This whole book was just fantastic, and so I actually build my midpoints and kind of who my characters are at the end and at the beginning around his work there. So I will link that down below. Fabulous book. So anyway, I also wanted to talk about, because this is how this whole thing from Campfire to Katie Tastic, these are all about building a first novel or a standalone novel, whereas I'm writing in series. So I'm actually plotting novels in a 15-book series, and it's really complicated and complex. If you've watched my previous videos, and you'll have seen that. I've got 2 books in that series out. One I published 15 years ago and did nothing with, and then I came back to writing and I revamped it, wrote the second book, wrote the third book, hated the direction that I took it in, threw it away, started in a new direction, and yeah, anyway. I actually just recently kind of shuffled my favorite parts of that previous version into the new version, and I'm very happy with it. It's going to go a lot faster now that I've kind of figured out exactly what. But this is what happens, because I actually really, really struggled with plotting that book, and it's because from like, I want to say, if I had been using this, I don't think I was using this when I plotted that book the original time. When I replotted it, I used this. And it's just fabulous. So the system that I set up here is so much better. But in the first version, I had actually plotted like from here to here. It was really mushy and it was really messed up. And I had a lot of deeply emotional scenes that were holding my main character back in the first version. So, but I had other characters and other plot lines that were doing some really cool stuff in the first version. So I just decided to blend them together and use this again to blend them together. And I may, if you guys want to see that process of blending together 2 very different versions of a book, I can show that later. But for right now, let's kind of go over how I use this, and how I've, through a series of mistakes and failures, I've learned to use this kind of setup in a way that works for plotting series. Okay, so for Katie Tastic's, this is make sure I'm in frame. That was another problem with the last video. I was not in frame for parts of it, and it was really irritating. So this is Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And this whole section is Act 1 for Katie Tastic. For me, my Act 1 kind of ends right here. And then this is Act 2, and then kind of, where did I put it last time? Because it actually, this is more fluid where it jumps into Act 3, but it's right about here is where it jumps into Act 3 for me. The rest of this, I build into the middle, and the reason for that is because I mix in K.M. Weiland into this setup, basically. So from here to here is kind of Act 1 for K.M. Weiland, and then, this is the Act 3 for K.M. Weiland, and it really works very, very well. Also, each one of these 3 scenes right here is a peak, and what these each do is create peaks leading to the climax and then the resolution. So each of these 3 is a peak and a build up, peak, drop down, but the drop down is always a bit more tension. This is in tension, I should say, than like the last peak. So this is taller than that one because we're ratcheting up tension, we're ratcheting up the conflict, we're building momentum up to this big crescendo up here of the big climax. So it's a good way to think of these, especially with how I've used them, because some of the labels on these I just don't use at all, or I move around. I still have them labeled the original Katie Tastic way, just because it's easier to explain the changes that I've made if you can see the original label. Okay, so we start here with an introduction, and originally this is kind of like our baseline. If this is a first novel or a standalone novel, this is where you kind of see the character in their natural state, like where they started at. And it kind of establishes like our baseline normal, like the baseline of where this starts. It establishes this line to where, where it starts, where it ends. This is their peace, I should say. not involved in this massive conflict. Okay, but for in a sequel, this is where the new story kind of jumps into the new story. So how much time has passed from the previous story? Is this immediately after the last book? Has there been time that's gone through? Have they changed while they've been between books? What's new? And also, this whole section here is about what could possibly bring these characters who have already gone through whatever this is, like a trial like this, through all of the conflict that creates a novel, the previous story, what would drag them back into a situation like that? Because in a first book, they're kind of curious and they're moving into it, and they're going into this story a bit more lighthearted than they are in a sequel. In a sequel, they're like, I've seen this before. I know where this is leading. This is probably gonna hurt. Why would I want to jump in? And so this kind of establishes, these first 3 really establish why a character would jump in. So then, and this also has the hook. So K.M. Weiland has the hook and then the key incident. And how should I put that? These 2 scenes here are very fluid, because this could be the inciting incident, could be the hook that brings readers in. The hook is the very beginning, the first few sentences, the first scene that says, hey, this is why you want to read this story. But the key incident is what brings the main character into the story. Sometimes the inciting incident is the same thing as the key incident. And sometimes the key incident happens after introductions, which happens after the hook. So the hook needs to be first, but it can either be the hook in the introductions or in the inciting incident. It's very fluid in here. So however you want to start it, you want to start your book, especially the first in a series, you want to start it with a big bang. You want it to drag readers through and in. With sequels and stuff like that, here needs to be where you're emphasizing why the characters would move into another thing. You're no longer selling readers on the book and on you and on taking on the risk of investing in you and an author. If they've picked up your sequel, they're already invested. What you want to do now is establish why these characters that they know so well from the first time around, why they would jump into another conflict. What would be important enough for them to come out of retirement if your last book ended in, resolve the conflict? What would bring them out of retirement and bring them into another situation? Now, if your first book, you didn't resolve all of the conflict, or you did what I did, which is add in later scenes that point to a deeper meaning of the conflict they just went through and it moving into something bigger, um, this would be, you know, the start of that something bigger. This thing that they're waiting on at the end of the last book, this is the start of it. This is the pop their bubble of, okay, we've got this moment of peace in here, and that this kind of pops the piece and says, okay, you're back into the crazy. Excuse me. Okay, so then this, for especially in a sequel, so this is Fallout. Basically, in a standalone novel, this is what are they going to do about these things? And whereas in the sequel, they're going, okay, what tools did I learn last time? This is a callback to the last book, pulling it into this book more. What did I learn last time that I can use to defeat this new problem that's been shown here? Whether they see the whole problem or not. Most of the time, they don't see the whole problem here, or they see part of the problem here. And this is kind of, what tools do I have that could move me forward? You know, what have I learned? What powers do I have? How have these characters from the previous book changed, and to make them think that they could handle this situation? For me, I really like to kind of throw a little bit of arrogance in here, especially in the second book, because the characters are like, oh, I defeated the bad guy in the last book, I'm gonna be fine, let's go. And so, yeah, whereas in my third book, there's a bit more humility here, where they're like, oh, just really? So, yeah. Anyway, so this is the first kind of ratchet up, right? This is the first peak, and where this stops, there needs to be more tension than where it ends. So this Fallout section right here, they need to be assured that they can, but there also needs to be a hint of that fear, that oh, you know, this new big bad situation that I'm heading into, how is it going to change my baseline again? Because their baseline did change. Okay, so this one is Reaction and Rebel, and I actually don't remember exactly what the Katie Tastic and Campfire explanation for this was. For me, I don't see my characters rebelling here, mostly because they're going to be rebelling on and off throughout the story. That's just kind of how I write my characters, and I write dark fantasy, so a lot of this is going to be scary and really dark. So my characters are going to be rebelling and struggling the entire time. So I don't really have just like this section where they're like, no, I'm not going to deal with this. This isn't happening. This is not happening to me. That's coming later, because especially in a series, they kind of already know, like, there's no point in this. Like, they're going to rebel later on, where they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how bad this new situation would be. I'm not okay with it. So for me, this is kind of trying to, instead of it being rebel or whatever, I have it be just a reaction. You know, how are they going to resolve the problems that were created by the inciting incident? This is like their first plan. So this is their initial plan on how to move forward. This is them kind of creating the plan or implementing the beginning of the plan, and then this is the actual plan in action. And so for me, this is kind of where they stumble upon problems with their initial plan, some big problems, whether it's interpersonal problems or environmental problems. They've got problems that are happening with this plan, and it creates conflict within the characters or within the situation, that kind of come to yet another peak, another crescendo right there. And then this is consequence, and this is how are they moving forward with this new set of problems, according to Katie Tastic. So for me, this is usually, I switch this to Wyland's point of view. For me, this is the point of no return. This is where they jump in feet first, and they go, okay, I know that I cannot not fix this. Whatever happened in here, they've realized that the problem is so big and so important that they have to jump in with both feet. Like, they have to go forward. So this is where they kind of figure out that there's no solution but to just kind of move forward. They can't go back. Sorry, I'm kind of looking at my notes while doing this, because this is actually really complex for me, especially with series. It gets more and more complex. So I have just a crap ton of notes on, you know, what I kind of want to build into these sections. And here, I'll show you. Like, it gets it gets really deep into it, and like the color coding, the purple is Katie Tastic and the pink is KM Wyland, and yeah, anyway, it gets really complicated. So I'm kind of reading what I have, but also riffing a little bit on it. So if I stop and I stumble, it's because I'm reading. Okay, so and then this is the end of the first act for me. This is where all of this buildup of, okay, are we going to, like, any questioning, any, self doubts. It kind of oh, there, my daughter's awake. If you guys heard the monitor, my daughter's awake, so I'm gonna have to cut this here, but and I'll come back to it. But for me, this is the end of Act 1. So they're fully invested in moving forward. Okay, I'm gonna go get my daughter and probably give her breakfast, and then I'll be back to this. Okay, so I am back. Hopefully hopefully you guys can hear me. So what's going on is my daughter is home sick. She's been very sick. We went to the ER over the weekend. And she's better. She's okay, but she still has a fever on and off, so she can't go to school. So she is homesick today. So I don't know if this video is going to go up on time, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm trying a new, oh God, what's that called? New microphone situation. And, yeah, if it goes in and out, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm still learning how to use this thing. Anyway, so where was I at? Oh, okay. So I was at the end of Act 1. So we are now on to this one. And this is called Pressure, and it's kind of where the interpersonal relationships strains are emphasized, as are the environmental difficulties. So this is kind of where it's like the feeling of, oh my gosh, I fully invested, and now the consequences of fully investing are coming to the fore here. But this is also a setup for the big emotional changes that are going to happen at the midpoint. So some of the problems here, the unresolved things here, are going to be, at the very minimum, they're going to lead to what needs to happen at the midpoint. This is also just kind of adds complexity to the main character in the story. We're learning more about our characters here. If this is a sequel, this is more about, the new conflict, and also about maybe any new characters. There's more in here where we discover more about what's new in this story. And apparently moving my filming area did not... My phone is in a stand, and it is connected to something that is not on my desk, but apparently me moving my desk is still moving it, so that's kind of frustrating. I'm trying to resolve that problem. Anyway, so that kind of sets up for this, what Katie Tastic calls here a plot twist. So I normally don't do this kind of plot twist here, or what I do is I kind of I set it up as like pressure, as part of creating pressure. Basically, this is about creating more pressure. So this pushes into more. I don't know how to explain that. I explained it better in the last video. Basically, if there is a plot twist, I'm putting the twist here so that it builds more pressure. Like, these two are flipped for me if I add a twist. Now, instead of a twist, I might add just more conflict, like a bigger, how should I put that? Like, this is a twist that forces the characters to really look at what is happening and wonder if they're making mistakes, or if they should just go home, because clearly they are not equipped for whatever nonsense this is. Something in here takes the main character and the reader's expectations and tosses them irreverently out the window. So for me, this whole section here is about just creating this, oh crap, I fully invested in something and I made a mistake fully investing because I am not equipped for this. Or my expectations about the situation that I'm coming into are like, we're just completely not even in the realm of realistic. And then this right here is Katie Tastic's point of no return. But for me, I like that earlier in the story. So sometimes I have this be like they resolve on a new direction. Like the lessons that they learn here, they go, okay, instead of going, continuing in the direction that we were planning on going, we're going to go a little bit this way because I need to skew things. Basically, they're going in the same direction, but how they get there, the path they choose, moves here. Yeah. And so I will also try something a little new, or if all else prevails, and I will, like, if I can't figure out what new direction this is, I'll just add in a bunch of different scenes kind of willy-nilly to try things out, and usually what I'll end up doing is cutting some of them. But I tend to be more of a pantser here. I tend to have scenes where it's like, oh, okay, I know that I need a scene here from, F's perspective. So I'll just toss in the scene number and then the perspective that it is, and I'll leave it open for as I build. I can go back to that and be like, okay, this needs to be here to create this up here, and it'll kind of come together. So I tend to, in this part right here, have a lot more scenes that are just, I need a scene from F's perspective, or I need a scene from S's perspective right here, and I'll just leave it blank until I'm, through. Not all of this needs to be filled out all at once either. A lot of this is going to change, especially as you write. As much as we are plotters, we also tend to change things as we're writing. So leaving some spaces open to make room for those changes instead of having to completely rewrite a bunch of scenes is helpful. So there are places in here where I leave, moments open. I also leave a lot of moments open up here, which I didn't talk about in the last video, but I'll have places like, I'll have extra spots open in different places just strategically because I know that there's going to be more from these other characters that I need to see that I don't know yet when I'm plotting. That'll come to me while I'm writing. Okay, so this is Katie Tastic's like beginning of Act 2, but for me this is, Act 2 started over here. So this is, for her, this is the characters are in an unknown situation and they're trying to figure it out. For K.M. Weiland, this is the first pinch point. So this is where the antagonist kind of comes in and reminds everybody, readers and protagonists, that they're scary, that they're big and bad, and that, the whole reason for this problem here, there's something huge wrong, and this is kind of the reminder. This calls back to the beginning of this story. I actually like to combine kind of these two plot points again. Like I flex it here, I flex it here as well. Because we need to see how the main characters are reacting and how the antagonist is reacting to the main character or the turning of events. So here I actually like to add, instead of just it being, how the main character is responding, how is the antagonist responding to the main character? And that can be kind of throughout these two scenes because I add in. So from here to here, I have like one scene for this and one scene for this and one scene for this, but I'll have like 2 scenes or 3 to 5 scenes actually per plot point. These are plot points. So I'll have, 3 here and 4 here and 2 here, like, blending together. And so up in here, in this, what's for Katie Tastic Act 2 is where I move from 3 to 5 plot points to more like 5 to 10 plot points. This is where I really expand on things and it gets a lot bigger. So in here, I'm playing more with these two and kind of intermingling them together because it needs to be this kind of back and forth of, okay, they're trying this new plan. Their new plan has kind of failed, or they've created yet another plan on top of their previous plan. And now how is the conflict reacting to this new plan? And how are they pissing off the main antagonist? How is the main antagonist going to retaliate with, how dare you come at me? So that's kind of, these two go together. And then for Katie Tastic, basically Fun and Games is shenanigans ensue, which I actually really like. I had to take out like the label Fun and Games and create like shenanigans for myself. It was the only way that I could actually like merge them together, because for me the name Fun and Games means that they're having fun in this new world. They're discovering this is a fun thing, but that doesn't fit in my books because I am writing dark fantasy. This is not fun. This is scary. This is dangerous. Now if I were writing something lighter like my book club book, that's more of a fun mystery book. That one, this is more like wickedly fun, but yeah, it's not fun. It's actually shenanigans. If I call it shenanigans, it works for me. So sometimes I add in something that makes the story even more complex here, but not sometimes. That's what I do. And I build more of why the main character is going to have to change the way that they do by the end of the story. Like I will add a mini battle or some sort of like mini thing that shows where the main battle is going to be. It kind of foreshadows the main battle. And I kind of want to create, how should I put that? I want it to foreshadow the rest of the conflict of the story and the beginning of the darker parts of the book. So from here to here, it's discovery. They're learning new things. It's kind of lighter. From here down, it's going to get darker and darker and darker. This is the beginning of like the really, really dark times. So sometimes I'll have a character get injured here, or I'll have, interpersonal conflicts created so that two characters are no longer able to work together here. Like, this needs to be something that creates a much bigger tension than anything that's gone before. And then for old juxtaposition, this is where Katie Tastic has a direct comparison between how they were before and how they were now. I don't do the old juxtaposition. I'm not comparing where they are now to the old world. Like, for me, that just, I don't see the point in that. I feel like that's a waste of time, especially I'm doing multiple POVs. So if I have like 3 characters going, well, back in, where I came from, we ate bread that's this way. Like that, no, just throw that away. I don't like it. Instead, what I do here is, this is more of a response to the new complexity and some of the new tensions, and it also releases some of the tensions from this mini battle. So maybe they're, cleaning up injuries here, there's apologies here, there's okay, like maybe we can't apologize to each other, but this is how we can find a way to work together here. It just kind of, it's a release of the tension from this, but it's not better. Like, again, this is not, it's not all better. It's better enough to move forward, and that's it. So from here, from the end of this scene to 21, I will do like 8 to 10 scenes. And these will explore deeper into the main character and the conflict and continue to raise tension. So if a scene feels unnecessary from here on out, or it becomes overcomplicated, or I drop it from the plot point. So if some of these become a problem, I just drop them. If this is a sequel from here to the midpoint, so from here to here, the character needs to recognize that they are being dragged into another situation that's going to get out of control. So they knew here that it was kind of going to be a problem, but here is when they realize that they're not going to be able to handle it, or that it's not, they can't take for granted what they learned before. This is kind of that humbling moment where they recognize that, oh, this is different. And maybe they'll lose something bigger this time, or the consequences will be bigger. Okay, so this is the lead up significantly right here. This is the lead up to the characters realizing that they need to change. For me, this is where they have flashbacks and reminders of the previous book. So this goes back to the previous book. So we've had some foreshadowing for the next book, but this goes back to no, maybe we haven't yet. I think up here is a foreshadowing for the next book. This is a callback to the previous book. They're having flashbacks. They're remembering forcefully the pain, the fear, the tools that they learned. They're forcibly reminded of what happened in the previous story that has an effect on now. And they're also learning why the tools that they had that helped them resolve that won't work now. This kind of pulls in those previous threads from the previous book and says, this is where they connect. Okay, and then this is the midpoint. So this is for James Scott Bell. This is the mirror moment. This is where they look in the mirror and they go, if I don't change, I'm going to die. And it's kind of, how should I put that? It's the turning point for the whole story. And in every plotting system I've ever seen, this is the turning point for the whole story. So from here to 21, according to K.M. Weiland, which I really, really like, the character is trying to choose how to handle the main conflict, and these choices and mistakes are going to create massive personal growth by the time they get to the end of this darkest moment. So, and what else did I have here? I have like a whole host of notes here. This was a lot. So I tend to blend these two together, this idea of this mirror moment and this personal catalyst all happening together, because this is going to be 8 to 10 scenes. So I'll have like these plot points of this is, F and this is E, this is my main character, and then I'll have a few more plot points, and then E will happen here again. So maybe here is the catalyst, and then here is the moment where they realize, oh my gosh, I need to change. This catalyst created this change. This is build up. This is part of this midpoint. This is part of the 8 to 10 scenes that I consider the midpoint. And for every single one of my main characters, they're going to have that conflict and mirror moment. But for characters that are not the main character, that can happen anywhere from here to here, that they're going to have these mirror moments. Because I want each of my main characters at least, so how should I put that? I have 9 main characters in the book I'm working on right now. At least 4 of them are going to have major changes in this plot. In fact, I think 6 of them do in this one. But their mirror moments are going to happen throughout these, the 50 scenes that are happening in here. Oh, there's my daughter calling for me. I'll be right back. But from here to here, each of them are going to have a mirror moment. Okay, so just realized that I was partially out of rain, or out of view on again. So yeah, from here, from 10 New World all the way down to like 18 is where my main characters are all going to have, their mirror moments. But this midpoint right here is the absolute main character. So my main character in the book that I'm working on right now, her name is Aina. Her midpoint mirror moment is going to be almost dead center in the middle of the book, at least as far as where it's plotted. Now, the battle and the climax, I will have a lot more words per scene than I will over here. But usually this lands right around in the middle because her journey is the most important journey throughout the story. However, every other character that are main characters that I have an arc for this story are going to have that mirror moment. So it's going to happen somewhere in here. And then some of them are important characters, but they don't have personal growth in the story. Maybe they do, like, how should I put that? Let's say I have a character named Farak, and he comes in the second book. It's my F character. He has an arc in the second book. In the third book, he will also have an arc. In the fourth book, he's not going to have an arc because there's going to be other arcs happening in that book. And then probably in the fifth book, he will have an arc again. So there's going to be some characters that won't have this massive personal growth in this story because it's not necessary for the story. They are who they need to be. They just need the tools. Whereas my main character is going to have an arc in every single story. There, that's how I can explain that. Okay, so this is a reversal. So this is where they kind of, they're making decisions based on this change they're trying to implement. So this is another, like, they're going forward, and then suddenly, okay, we're trying this way forward, or we're trying this way forward. They're still going towards that resolution, but they're trying new directions based on what they've learned about themselves here. Especially the main character. The main character is going to push for, hey, I just realized I need to become a nicer person. So they're going to try to be a nicer person here. Or, hey, I just realized I need to learn this new magical skill. So they start trying to learn that magical skill here. This is like the implementation of what they've realized they need to change. And they're going to fail. They're absolutely going to fail. They're going to try that new magic and they're going to fall flat on their butt. They're going to try to be a nicer person and they're going to cuss somebody out. The changes are attempted and not... like they fail. Okay, so then we get to, okay, wait, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Okay, so from here on out, according to Cam Weiland, it's personal. And I love this kind of flop over because from this point forward, they are just reacting to what is happening to them, and they're trying to react in the way that they're in the best way that they can. From here forward, they are trying to implement changes, and I definitely agree with her about that. I think that the second half of a story is really about, okay, I've realized what I need to change here, and about how they are going to proactively move the story forward in a way that works for them, rather than just reacting to what the antagonist is doing. So if they know that they need to work on this new magic here in order to defeat the antagonist, instead of just going, well, I don't know, they go, how do I work on this magic? What do I need to do to learn this lesson in order to move forward? And they proactively start making really intense choices here. It's no longer a reaction of, well, if they do this, then I'll do this. It's, I'm going to do this. It's no longer if, it's I will. And they're going to make mistakes. I think from here to here is basically like them learning, oh, well, I don't really know how that I'm doing that very well. Okay, so, and if this is a sequel, this is where, right here, this is like a super important for me. If this is a sequel, this is where the main character also recognizes and pursues the new tools that they need to handle this new thing and this new conflict. So this, it's maybe new physical tools, new mental and emotional tools. And this is kind of where they realize, like, okay, what I had before, that build up from the previous book, it's no longer working. So they're just going to drop things. So this is where, like, you know, if a previous character was able to see, let's say, see ghosts from before, and they're counting on that ability to see ghosts from here on out, they realize that that's actually a distraction. Like, the ghosts are a distraction. They need to be focused on this other ability that they have. So from here on out, they're really focused on new tools. The tools that they, you know, had back here are no longer working. They need new tools. Yeah. Okay. And then 16, according to Katie Tastic, this is where the characters are reflecting on everything. I do not have my characters stop and reflect. For me, my books are high action, high fast paced. So if there's any reflecting going on, it's happening while they're action scenes. So this is a lot more of those open, you know, okay, I need something from S's perspective and I need something from L's perspective. And there's a lot more open in here that builds up to this trials right here. To Katie Tastic, this is the protagonist's first major push into making their own decisions, which again, that's happened up here, based on K.M. Weiland, and I actually really like it up there. But for K.M. Weiland, this is a second pinch point. So this is where the antagonist's power is emphasized, ramping up the stakes and foreshadowing the final battle. I believe that's a direct quote, but I'm not sure. It might be a direct quote. Anyway, but this is the second pinch point, and this is where, like, my characters kind of realize that, how should I put that their new plan again needs to adjust, and that the new tools that they're looking for are even more important. If this is a sequel, there needs to be immediate resistance within the plot and themselves to these new changes. Haven't they given enough? Why must they make these changes? It's the aha moment in a sequel isn't as clean as it was in the first book. And it's more personally painful and difficult, and they stumble more here because they're like, I've already done this. This is kind of, while they're taking action, they're still seeing themselves as a victim of the circumstances, not the hero. And this kind of needs to be resolved here, where in here they decide that they are the hero and that they're going to move forward. Okay, and I am back again. So basically, this is also a peak, and then it kind of drops. This is the drop right here. And this is, you know, they fall and they land hard and they kind of brush themselves off and get going again. This is where they're basically, they're like, okay, I get it, I understand, I feel like a victim. Why is this happening to me? And they kind of right here go, okay, it doesn't matter why this is happening to me. As much as I'm the victim in this situation, I just need to keep moving forward because it's not going to change until I move forward. This is kind of another, like, mini midpoint here, where they just kind of choose to move ahead. Okay. So, and this one is up here is labeled The Calm Before the Storm. And for me, this is where they begin to implement yet another new plan after their stumble from before. So they stumbled down here. Now they're kind of like, okay, new plan. Like, what's our next new plan? What's plan D? Plan D! Like, that's, you know, what's happening here. So for this is plot twist and unexpected hope. I never, ever add unexpected hope. Again, dark fantasy. There's a lot of really dark themes in my work. I almost never add an unexpected hope here, or if I do, I twist it because right after this is the darkest moment, all is lost moment. So this needs to be a really, really dark twist. So something new and unexpected happens to disrupt this latest plan, but it is so intensely horrible that it pushes the character to complete despair in this next scene. Okay. So the main character's plan fails or succeeds and leads to terrible consequences. They break that barrier open, and instead of resolution, all hell breaks out. Okay, so this is the point where I consider the beginning of Act 3. because from here on out, we're narrowing our focus a bit, and each of these scenes from here on out is going to have 3 to 5 scenes per thing. And it'll actually narrow down even more down here. This is, one scene. However, these scenes that I have down here are usually like 200 words from one character's point of view, jump to another character's point of view. My battles I do differently, and I'll explain that when I get there. Because I do multiple point of view instead of single point of view. If I did single point of view, this would all kind of bleed together into one big main scene. But because I have multiples, there's multiples down here. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, and then this is the third plot point from Cam Weiland's. This is where the protagonist must rise to face the conflict. That is a direct quote. I love that quote. This is where the place where they must rise to face the climax. I love that. So here, the main character loses something here, something important to them. There's maybe a death or a loss of a sense of self-confidence. They lose. It's over. The world is ending. They are an utter failure. Losing their previous tools from, like, the last book, this is defeat. So this is where, like, if you're reading the Dresden Files, he's, his main buddy that was helping him is gone, and he's lost his tools, he's lost his staff, and his car broke down, and he's trapped, and this is the darkest moment. So, how should I put that? Oh, defeat. It sets them back to being as vulnerable as they were at the beginning of the previous story. So this is again where, like, in a sequel, this needs to call back to the previous book, and then, like, as in they're as vulnerable as they was at the beginning of the previous book. They've lost everything, but it also needs to connect forward. So if I'm planning on writing another book after this one, this is where I will foreshadow a later story. So how can this low point be connected to something further down the road, something darker than what they're already going through? What is the lesson here that would require another mirror moment in the next story, and adds new threads that connect to the next story? So, whereas these are kind of all looking at previous, this is really building towards the next book, if I'm having a next book. If I'm not having a next book, then it's just they've lost everything and they're as vulnerable as they were before. How do they get up from here? How are they going to get up? So, and then power within. So I actually didn't take notes on what Katie Tastic or Cam Weiland had for here. I have my own interpretation from this. So it doesn't matter. This is where they realize that it doesn't matter that they are an utter failure. Someone or something needs them. They cannot give up. So this is where they have reminders of all of their reasons for being involved and what they've learned that makes getting up and trying again worthwhile. They have to show what they love more than they love themselves. In sequels, this will get lower and harder than it was in previous books. They will have an even harder time getting up because they've already been here. How could life put them here again? Again, that's that victim kind of feeling where they're like, how could life do this to me again? How could life take so much from me again? Like, how can this happen again? Why would life do this to me? And then they again step from victim into hero, where this really, it doesn't matter, because they need to be, the reasons, how should I put that? The reasons are bigger and more important than their reasons for sitting here and feeling sorry for themselves. Again, because if this is a sequel, this needs to be bigger than the previous book. This needs to expand. This needs to be about more people. It needs to be a bigger conflict, and it needs to be more important than the previous one. Also, if you've got a group with multiple point of view, there needs to be other characters in the group that maybe potentially have these big moments where they push. It's, I like to make my main character be the one that makes that final push, but sometimes there's something that a side character says that helps them change and push and decide that power within, that decision to be more than just the victim is more important. There's something more important here. And then, okay, so according to Katie Tastic, this is kind of where they create a new plan to solve the main problem, which, works. Totally fine. It's great. In sequels, their arsenal of what they could do will be bigger, so in response, the resources that they have available to them are no longer available. So what do I have left? So this is, again, previous book, those tools that are lost, but it's not like an I feel sorry for myself. It's, okay, what do I have left? Where do I go from here? What do I take? So if I've got, like, a quarter of the power that I had previously, how can I use that quarter power and move forward? If I only have a knife, whereas I used to have a sword and a spear, how can I move forward with that knife? This is that kind of a thing. Where was I? One path forward is a narrow. Okay, so the path forward is like they have only one path forward, and it's a narrow possibility. And if they use magic, their magic is depleted or nullified. Their superhuman needs to be brought back to human. It's really important that everything that made them so big before gets brought back down, and they're back down to almost human. And for as much as they've grown, only the lessons they've learned so far. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. So as much as they've grown, only the lessons they've learned so far have not been stripped from them. So the lessons learned are the things that have not been stripped, but most of their tools have been stripped from them. And so they have to plan accordingly and get moving, basically. Okay, so this is the convergence. So subplots and main plots connect here, according to Katie Tastic. And I actually really like that. But it's not just plots, it's threads. So if this is a sequel, maybe an unresolved thread from the previous book comes into play here, or an important question gets answered from the previous book. This is where things come together and gather together by the main character to face the ending. This is an intentional gathering of strength and community, and it all kind of comes crashing together. So if there's like two different groups that are pursuing the same goal from different directions, they crash together here. Or like if a lesson learned from the previous book hadn't been brought up yet, it connects to here. Or like a mystery that was kind of left unresolved in the previous book, there needs to be an aha moment here. Like this is a convergence of a lot of different things. Now if there's a sequel after this, I will leave some threads from the first book and let them move on, and then some kind of connect here. Yeah. Okay, so this is the final battle. This is where the hero faces the antagonist. This is usually a cluster of intense moments going back and forth between point of views for me that raise the tension. I like to show like, okay, so I'm in, this person's point of view, and they get punched in the ribs and they yell out, and then it jumps to the next person's point of view, and like 2/3 of the way through that, they hear the person yell, and they kind of look over to see what happens to the person. And I like it to be kind of this intense rise of tension here. There's almost no dropping in tension. And each of my characters that have been main characters need at least two separate separate areas in a battle sequence where they're facing bad guys. And yeah, it's hard to explain. But anyway, it jumps from person to person to person. But it's all leading to this climax where the hero actually faces the big bad. Oh, I had a capital L there. I can type. Just now noticed that. So this is where okay, so how did Cam Weiland put this? I love this. So from Cam Weiland, she says that it's a mix of inevitability and the unexpected. And the unexpected needs to not be like some big magical, I wrote haha there because it's no magical gods, according to her, come in and save the protagonist, which I think is really important. However, I'm writing about, old gods and things like that. So it's kind of a ha moment for me. But there can't be this big, like divine intervention that saves the character. They have to save themselves. But it also there needs to be like a feeling of inevitability, which I love. I love that kind of, this is from the beginning of this story, and maybe even from the beginning of the last story, this conflict, this moment is inevitable. It has to happen. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is where, and my notes say, this is where the good guy faces the bad guy in themselves. So this is like where it narrows down to a single moment of chance. This is my main character and my antagonist. And they go head to head. And all of this battling around is to also enable this moment. Because my main character is not battling the other bad guys that are over here. My side characters are. My main character is facing the antagonist. And this is just kind of where we learn whether or not... I should say, how should I put that? How did I write that? I'm just going to read it. Has the main character learned enough to defeat this bad guy, or are they all just in a meat grinder? All of the characters that are involved in there, are they in a meat grinder? Are they all going to die? Are they just fodder, or are they going to succeed? That's the question that needs to be answered here. And yes, I said meat grinder intentionally. I said it in the last one, and I'm saying it in this one because I write dark fantasy. It is horror. It is gory. And usually these are quite painful. And I kill a lot of my darlings here. This is where it's gonna hurt. To be a reader, to be emotionally invested, this is where it's gonna hurt. And then the aftermath, the resolution, it's kind of like, okay, have they defeated them? Then, what happens? Or if they didn't defeat them, what happened? And usually in a series, this is where I would add hints at the next story, or I would add in an epilogue to encourage the reader to want to move forward to the next story, or where I would create a cliffhanger that says, this is only the beginning, there's more. The main character does not get to move on completely. So if you are writing something that has a next book, this is where you leave it open-ended for the next book, or where you specifically leave. I have, at the end of my book 4, I know that the book ends in the middle of a much larger conflict. So partial conflict came to a resolution, but it's opening up into another huge conflict. So there's almost no resolution in that book, but there are some lower tension scenes, if that makes sense. There's less conflict, and they're lower tension, but it's like, oh god, we're jumping into this next big thing. But you also have to ratchet up just a smidge, a teeny tiny itty bitty. If you've got your big main character, this is a better visual. If you've got your big main character conflict here, and you've got all this tension here, this needs to be a little blip of tension here of, oh, wait, what? Think about like in Marvel movies, at the end of Marvel movies, when they have in that credits, they have that next scene of where they're like foreshadowing the next story. There kind of needs to be some of that here in your story, in your book, of like, wait, what's happening? I really like to do that in epilogues, but not everybody reads the epilogues, so there does need to be like a lowering of tension here. However, if you skip my epilogues, you are missing out because they are freaking fantastic. I love them. Okay. So if I'm looking at the structure, how I use this is what I'll do is, let's say my main character is this purple, right? In every single one of these main plot points, I have a scene from my main character's perspective. And usually, there's at least one from my main character's perspective. But from like here, there'll be 2 with other characters in between. And it'll ratchet up to 2. Usually. Until we reach this dark moment, which is really important. And then it's, 1 again until this big battle. And in here, sometimes I'll even have 3 from my main character's perspective. And it'll drop off again. And then I add the other characters in between. So what I'll do is I will have like a list of what it is, and it'll be like, okay, plot point 5, and I'll have 5, and then, what that plot point is, and then I'll have A, B, C, D, E, F, and it'll be like main character here, and then next character, and they'll interact, next character, and then main character again, and next character, and next character. And if I have like a 9 point of view book, I'll have 7 to 10 scenes here. And I'll usually have one character that's not in this one unless it's really important, and then they jump into the next one, but it'll connect the 2, if that makes sense. The main characters' perspectives are the main plot points. So if my main character is, let's say my main character happens to fall right there and there, this is where number 5 happens, and where number 5 is going to lead into number 6, if that makes sense. So, let's look at this. So if this is action and consequence, this is my character taking action. This is my character's actions leading to consequences. So this is the beginning of the consequence. And then I'll have 6, and it'll have what that plot point is, and I'll have A, B, C, D. And let's say my main character is, again, like, maybe this is from, a different main character. So let's say it's S. We've got an S scene here, and an S scene here. This will be S. And then my main character will have to deal with the consequences of the fallout here. And maybe it'll be in this character's where the fallout happens. So it's kind of fluid between the main characters, but the main plot points need to happen in the main character's perspective. And sometimes you can add, like, let's say S is down here, and S is doing some of this number 5 shenanigans too. So this is S's number 6. Maybe these 2 have a fight. These are the consequences. These 2 have a fight, and it's in S's perspective. That kind of a thing. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to elaborate on that anymore. I know that I usually end up, when I use this system, I end up between, like, I want to say 120 to 180 scenes. Now, my scenes are usually between 200 to, 15 words per scene. So this is for bigger books. So if you're not writing something that's this big, I would drop down some of these scenes in here, because you don't need as much fill out in the middle of a shorter story. But I'm writing big, like, literal battles. These are big, they're epic, they're especially after the first book. The first book is a bit narrower, the second book is a bit bigger, and by the time we get to the third book, we're looking at an actual battle in the actual real world, a big battle. And that's, the only hint I'm going to give you about book 3 if you decide to read it. I actually just created new blurbs and new covers for my first 2 books. I'm really waiting until I get to a point where I've got my first 5 books finished before I really start pushing and advertising for my books. But if you happen to see them, if you're interested, click the links below and kind of read a little bit of what I'm talking about. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will be back next week with not a repeat video. Yeah, thanks for watching.